From Transport Topics in Washington, D.C., this is RoadSigns. Here is your host, Seth Clevenger.
Thank you for listening to RoadSigns, the podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. In this episode, we're going to examine how trucking companies can improve safety by better managing vehicle speed. We all know that safety is of the utmost importance for any fleet operation, and speeding is a key factor that can contribute to crashes. So how can fleet managers harness technology to get a better handle on vehicle speed and improve the safety culture at their companies? We'll set out to answer that question in this episode. To learn more, we're going to bring in a pair of technology suppliers to discuss how speed monitoring and adaptive speed control can help mitigate risk in the trucking industry. Later in the program, we'll play an interview I recorded earlier this year with Mathieu Boivin, the CEO of eSmart. But first, I'm excited to welcome Jonathan Hubbard, CEO and co-founder of SpeedGauge. Thanks for joining the program, Jonathan.
Hey, great to be here, Seth.
So as you know well, safety, of course, is paramount in the trucking industry. And there are many factors that have an effect on safety performance, but vehicle speed is one variable that fleets and drivers really can directly control. So I want to start there. Just how important is speed when it comes to reducing the frequency and severity of crashes?
Well, we know from our own research that the more you speed, the more likely you are to have a crash. And more specifically, the more you speed, the more likely you are to have a higher insurance claims. In fact, our highest speeding vehicles really are seeing, insurance claims twice as high as the median. We've done some research over the last 12 months working with a number of insurance companies to prove this out. And of course, this really isn't any news to anyone. Road engineers have known this for decades, but it was really exciting for us to compare real world vehicle data coming off of our customers' vehicles and their insurance loss data to prove this out. The other really interesting thing about speeding is our speed data is, I think it's a window. It's a window into the safety culture that you have at a fleet, and it's a window into in-cab driver awareness. And it takes, in my opinion, it really takes actually a lot of active engagement for a driver to not keep up with the flow of traffic and to set his own speed. So in that way, speed management is a really interesting view into what's going on.
Well, that's helpful. And, of course, SpeedGauge offers a speed monitoring and driver coaching service that connects through onboard GPS tracking systems from a variety of different suppliers. But before we go any further with the interview, could you just take a moment to just explain a bit more about how this works for those who might not be familiar with it?
Sure. Our company is we're not a hardware company. We're a software company. We ingest telematics data, vehicle location data. You might call it, pings, GPS crumbs from GPS tracking providers, ELD, telematics. All those once a minute reports about location, and we ingest that data and match it up with speed limit information to create interesting reports and statistics about speeding. We now have a driver app, which we're really excited about, but historically our reports and services have been aimed at fleet safety managers and driver supervisors. And we put this together in a program that we call the SpeedGauge Safety Center. Then that, as you said, is resold to fleets through our telematics partners. We rarely sell services ourselves directly to fleets. So they resell the service as a low-cost, value-added module, and we are now integrated with about 50 different telematics and ELD providers around the world, and we're monitoring nearly 500,000 vehicles per month. And a key part of this, of course, is a proprietary speed limit database that we build and maintain and are continually improving in many ways thanks to feedback from our users. And we use that to generate these reports and statistics. And pretty much the important factor in our service is that we're really not focusing on the individual speeding events. We're not looking to see whether or not, Jim is driving 53 in a 45. That's less interesting to us than the patterns and the trends that we're seeing. And, when people start to use our program, it's not even just a question of focusing on individual drivers. Initially, it's focusing on the fleet itself. Because we serve so many different fleets and thousands of fleets, we're able to benchmark those fleets nationally. And so a fleet can get a sense of where it stands compared to other fleets and get a sense of whether or not its speeding issues are linked to individual drivers or more likely to the overall safety culture within the fleet.
And of course, you guys also offer I think, an interesting product is a connected speed limiter that will actually adjust to the posted speed limit. So, what are the advantages to that approach compared to, say, a basic speed governor that, just sets a maximum speed?
Well, I should say that product is actually delivered in partnership with another company called MagTek, and they deliver the product, the solution as the MagTek Safe Speed, and it's a really really exciting and novel technology. It is, as the name suggests, it's a geographically aware speed limiter. So it is limiting the speed of the vehicle by the local posted speed limit. So if you're driving through a residential area with a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, you can't drive faster than 25 miles an hour, unless, of course, you hit the override button, which is there for convenience and safety. And the way that solution involves it's in aftermarket in vehicle hardware. It's a GPS modem and a cable to the throttle, and it is integrated with our back end and customization so that, for example, if you want to limit the speed of the vehicle to 35 miles an hour on dirt roads in Alabama at night, you can set that rule through our system, and then that flows to the speed limiter. I think the benefit, of course, is that, well, on one hand, it can be used in few different ways. But one hand is you can use it just for top speed governing, so you can be in compliance with the laws of Quebec and Ontario, which require speed limiters. I think it's 105 kilometers there, and then you can have a different speed governor, top speed governor out in Texas or Arizona, because it's geographically aware in that way. Then, of course, you can also use it in the residential areas that I mentioned. And I think from a insurance perspective, that's some pretty good inoculation against some claims that about speed management and speeding awareness in a fleet.
And I also want to follow up on some of your earlier comments about telematics and data analytics. Of course, it's an ongoing trend for years now that fleets have been capturing more and more information about their operations through just more and more onboard sensors in their vehicles. But how are the fleet managers, your customers, using the data that you're capturing to really better manage their operations? What kind of insights are they really gleaning from this speed data?
Well, as I said, I think they're getting, in a sense, um, into the culture that's within their fleet, and they're able to do a number of different things. One is that they're able to use our system to identify those drivers who really are doing it right, and because our system is opposed to a lot of other technologies that are, whether it be cameras or harsh braking detection, collision avoidance, which are triggered on rather rare events. We're continually monitoring, and so we're able to identify those drivers who are continuously doing it right. So as we, advise fleets to deploy our program, we really look for them to, or suggest that they use our systems to identify those drivers who are doing it right, that they publicly acknowledge how they're doing, and then simply I use our ratings and so forth to find those outliers, those folks who are speeding a bit more than others, and to step back and try to determine why those drivers might be speeding. And in many cases, you need to start with, before getting into the individual driver behavior, you need to start looking at things like dispatch and congestion and customers. So we suggest that they take, 5 drivers. I was talking to a fleet recently, and he has 600 drivers, and he says he manages his SpeedGauge program by just talking to 5 drivers a week. He takes those 5 drivers, he looks at their data, he explores why they might have a speeding issue, he looks for all the issues that could be outside of the cab, and then he sits down with the driver and talks about that. And And if there's some challenging discussions that's done privately, and that process that dialogue creates more awareness for the driver in the cab. Of course, then talking to one driver means that driver is going to talk to 5 other drivers, and so then word spreads within the fleet, and of course also the public acknowledgement of those who are doing it right, maybe even some bonuses and so forth, really spreads the word. And so fleets are really using this program to start to try to address cultural issues, I guess, and to bring about behavior changes that way.
In times like these, it's crucial to stay informed. Transport Topics is offering all the information you need to make business decisions in these unprecedented times. And in the wake of the many event cancellations and group gatherings, TT ensures a virtual way to consume business content and conversation. To join the conversation and stay ahead of the news, follow Transport Topics on all social outlets or by visiting ttn.ws/stay informed.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't also bring up the coronavirus pandemic that the industry and really the whole world is going through right now. And of course, this has created many challenges for the transportation industry. But one small silver lining we've seen come out of that is a reduction in traffic congestion for trucking fleets. At least according to the fleet manager I've spoken with, that's been one um, you know silver lining in a very difficult situation. But have you happened to collect any data over the past few months that has shown that with all the information that you're collecting?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw it right away. We saw changes in traffic volume of our users, our fleets, and then we saw, I don't know if you call it silver lining, we saw it alarmingly in road speed, in vehicle speeds. We saw a rise in the average speed within our users, and sometimes we saw some pretty scary stuff. But the really interesting thing, actually, we also noticed was that some of our customers, for some of our fleets, there was no change. There's no change at all. And then we realized what's going on there is that means that they actually really do have a really strong culture. And you take not the blinders, but you take the shackles off, if you think about it, the shackles of congestion. And those fleets where the drivers were already in the right lane, who weren't trying to keep up with traffic, who were setting the speed themselves and determining how fast they're going to drive, their behavior didn't change. And we certainly see those fleets where COVID didn't change their speeding statistics. So I think that's evidence of cultural issues going on.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's the ecosystem is different with fewer other vehicles on the road. So who's consistent and who maybe picks up their speed a little bit because now maybe they can or they think they can. So it's certainly something that fleets should keep in mind as they manage through this process and this really unusual time that we're all going through. I also wanted to circle back to insurance as one of the items you mentioned earlier. The rising cost of insurance is definitely becoming a really key concern for fleets. We've seen nuclear verdicts really driving up the costs in recent years. So I want to get your thoughts on how speed monitoring kind of plays into insurance costs, risk assessments, insurance premiums. How much of a link is there between those two things?
Oh, thanks for that question. Yeah, SpeedGauge has been around for over a decade now, but for the last couple of years, we've started to get into the insurance business, into the insurance ecosystem. And so I would say that our work or speed management or speed monitoring relates to insurance in 3 different ways. One is assessing risk. The other is reducing risk, or what the insurance people call loss control. And number 3 is improving litigation outcomes. So, as I mentioned right at the top, we've working with insurance companies, and we're seeing a real correlation between excessive speeding and the cost of insurance claims. That was part of our work to develop our own proprietary risk scores that we are now licensing or now delivering to insurance companies for some of our clients. And what's kind of interesting about speed monitoring is, insurance companies, of course, are interested in cameras and interested in all sorts of different technologies. But one of the interesting things about speed monitoring is we can develop solutions that are useful across all different camera, ELD, telematic solutions. And the insurance companies, one of their challenges is that they have many different policyholders, and those policyholders have elected to buy many different kinds of ELD and telematics solutions. And so speed monitoring happens to be something that one can do, analytics that one can bring to every single type of solution. And so that with that, we're able to create some reports and risk underwriting that's common across all these different devices. So that's one aspect of it. Another interesting aspect about the risk assessment piece is that because we are working with really granular data, this 1 minute pings, we are able to really bring some insight into the very smallest fleets, into the owner operators, and we are able to determine, who is good and who is lucky. And so the first insurance companies that are working with us are actually working at that end of the market, and really working with us to identify those, one vehicle fleets that have an obvious safety culture and are, better performers in terms of risk. And that's really important because, historically, small fleets have always been pooled together, and the insurance companies had no statistical way of determining who's who. And so I think that this is really helping them on that side. Then the last two quickly on reducing risk, and improving loss control. Well, that's, if you can do something, use safe speed monitoring to improve your safety culture, that's going to flow through all sorts of benefits on loss control. And then any good safety program, whether it be ours or any other out there, that helps a fleet, provide transparency, accountability, and communication, and continuous improvement. We have to believe is going to help in the courtroom, help a company defend itself against against liability claims by showing that it's a good corporate citizen that invests in safety and is really paying attention to that.
And safety, of course, is the top priority. It should always be number one in trucking. But another potential benefit of controlling speed is also reducing fuel consumption. So just how much of a difference can that make? Just a lower maximum speed. How much of a difference can that make for fuel economy?
Well, I don't have any really hard data for you because SpeedGauge is not integrated into the MPG data coming out of telematics. But we certainly have lots of anecdotal information and reports from our customers. And we have customers that are talking about improving their MPG by half a mile, and that gets to be pretty significant. If you're driving 2,000 miles a week at $2.50 a gallon, even the low price today, that's $2,200 in 40 months or something. And where is that coming from? I think it's coming from two sources. One, of course, is like standard governing. If you're controlling that top speed, you're going to get savings from that. And the other piece is if you are, as I like to say, not trying to keep up with traffic. If you are in control of your own speed and setting your own speed, you're going to be hitting the brake and throttle a lot less, and you're just going to get better performance that way.
And before I let you go, I also want to kind of look ahead and get your thoughts on the future of safety technology in the trucking industry. So, the crystal ball question I always like to end with, apart from, speed monitoring and telematics, we also see advances in active safety and automated driving technology. We see, onboard video has really caught on, uh, data analytics, driver coaching, just to name a few of the developments we've seen. But what do you think are the next steps for fleet safety, in the decade ahead?
Well, I'm really interested. I get excited by all those technologies, and I'm really interested in them. But I have to say, in a way, that I think that um, more of the gain might be had outside of specific safety technology, and rather doing initiatives that help reduce stress for the driver and improve the driver's experience. So, addressing better dispatching, better scheduling, better coordination between shippers and receivers, helping avoid detention, um, not to mention truck stops and everything else that rest breaks and so forth that can reduce that driver's stress, so that they are not stressed, because we certainly see from our data, and from these, I talked about how we really encourage in the deployment of our safety center program that users of our managers and supervisors of our system try to get in, ask that question: why does a professional driver feel that he needs to speed? And those dialogues, those questions get at a lot of those kind of issues related to dispatch and congestion and so forth. So I'm kind of more excited about somehow some of those things can be done, improved to improve the driver's on-road experience, and I think that will actually have some surprising improvements in safety.
No, that's really important to think about, and I think a fascinating answer to how we can move forward as an industry by addressing. I think just driver comfort, driver satisfaction, plays into so much else of what we do in transportation. But I think this has been a great conversation, but that's a good place to leave it. So thanks again, Jonathan, for joining the program and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks so much, Seth. It's been great.
Did you know you can ask Alexa to open Transport Topics? In just 1 minute, you will hear the biggest trucking headlines of that day. Be prepared and start your morning off right with Transport Topics.
We're here in Atlanta at TMC's 2020 annual meeting, and I'm pleased to welcome Mathieu Boivin, CEO of Transtex and eSmart, back to RoadSigns. Thanks for joining us.
Seth, thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you again.
Yeah, so when we spoke on this podcast a year ago, we discussed the latest advances in trailer aerodynamics, but this time we're going to talk about a very different topic, and that's driver safety. One very important factor in safely operating a vehicle of any kind is speed. And, lots of fleets, of course, use speed governors to cap the maximum speed of their trucks, but of course the appropriate speed varies based on the location and the posted speed limit. And eSmart has an interesting approach to this. Your system provides intelligent speed adaptation by using GPS to actively manage the maximum speed based on the truck's location. So just tell us a little bit more about how that works and why you think it's important to go beyond a basic speed governor and have a more adaptive, intelligent approach to speed management.
So we're very proud of the success of eSmart. So how it works, using GPS technology, we limit the speed of the truck per speed zone. So compared to basic governors where you only limit the truck at the top speed, 60, 65, or 70, eSmart allows the vehicle not to exceed lower speed limit. So it's an active speed limiter. We do this at all speed zones, and we also limit the speed in a risk area and danger zone, let's say.
And just how much of a difference can speed management make for overall fleet safety? In terms of preventing the frequency and severity of crashes. Of course, we think about speeding tickets, but how much of a difference does this really make in practice for safety?
So there's multiple studies that clearly say that actively managing the speed increase the safety. So, according to DOT, 30% of all accidents are speed related, and 70% of the fatal crash accidents happens on non-interstate highway or roads. So managing the speed at lower speed makes a big difference. Stats in mind, we designed a solution on being active rather than being passive, and this which makes all the difference in, let's say, the performance of improving the safety record of a fleet.
Sure, and speed is also an important factor in fuel efficiency. So do you have fleet customers that are using the product not only to improve safety, but also to reduce fuel consumption?
Yes, even if our focus is on safety, we do have a feature called low base power management. That feature allows fleet to save fuel. We reduce the power of the truck depending on the load it's carrying. So we have a sensor on the fifth wheel of the truck. This enables the truck to save fuel when they have less load.
Another hot topic in the transportation industry is insurance costs. Insurance for motor carriers has been on the rise. How much potential do you see for this type of technology to help fleets lower their premiums?
Absolutely. We've been contacted by some insurance company for them to see if our data set is good enough for them to see if there's a evolution or improvement in the safety record of a fleet. So we are in the process. Definitely, this will result in lower premium for fleets.
And of course, if you're going to deploy onboard technology, it's important for the drivers to accept it. So how do drivers react to technology like this that limits their top speed? And what can fleets do to make that case to their drivers? This helps them be safer, prevents crashes, and is something that they should be supportive of.
Yeah, it's very important. It's a priority for TransTech to have the onboarding of the driver. Driver is very important. We don't want a driver that is against the technology. So a lot of fleets have, we do training, and a lot of fleets have trade in reality, a little bit of more leadway on high speed for more control on lower speed, and driver looks very happy about this. They can, attain on long distance, get better time on long distance while being safer on lower speed limits.
Let's also talk about some of the newer features you're adding to eSmart. I know you're looking at things like weather and traffic conditions, construction zones, school zones, mapping of high-risk speeding zones. Just tell us a little bit more about how that's going to evolve.
Yeah, eSmart is always innovating and working with our customer. We come with the base platform technology, and then customer asking us for features which answer better their needs. Some of them wants alerts on a truck stop on the highway, very specific geofencing for improving their safety. As you know, we limit speed differently per states in the US. So this is all feature that we usually worked on with our customers. What's coming now is we're working with ELD telematics so that we have driver identification when the driver logs on the ELD. So we can now push to the truck per driver configurations. Also, we send voice message to the driver if there's dangerous incidents or so that we need to communicate with the driver. We can communicate with the ELD and send voice commands.
Okay, and you've also added low bridge collision prevention to the platform, and of course nobody wants to be that next driver to wind up on a viral YouTube video or something on Twitter that shows a truck striking a low overpass. So tell us how that the low bridge collision prevention feature works.
So low bridge collision prevention is a feature that is active at a lot of our fleet. There's about 4,000 low bridge in the northeast of the USA, and truck hit them often. So what we do is 750 feet before hitting the bridge, we will reduce the speed of the truck to 1 mile per hour. So we never apply brakes, but the truck will coast down to 1 mile per hour, and an alert will inform the fleet manager that one of his truck is in an alert position. So the manager will remotely reactivate the truck to get it out of that difficult position.
Yeah, and that could certainly save a big costly accident, and obviously some bad press and bad attention on the company.
There's a big ROI on that.
And eSmart is an aftermarket product, but I also want to ask if you're interested in partnering with truck OEMs, truck manufacturers, to potentially have this technology installed at the factory level.
Absolutely, we want to make it the integration seamlessly. So any partnership that can help customer to achieve that, we're all forward for this. So we believe that it will help the customer, it will help the OEM to just work together with them for having eventually factory install.
And what do you think the future holds for intelligent speed management? I mean, do you see the industry moving away from, what we have today with, basic speed governors and moving more and more toward this more dynamic, adaptive speed management, speed control in the future?
As we know, autonomous vehicles are coming later than we thought, so that creates a big space where ADAS technology will have a lot of opportunity. eSmart is one of them that definitely will be, I believe, a big one coming. So I believe in the next few years, most of the fleet will have to rely on ISA for their fleet. So we're very positive about that.
Got it. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation, but I think we've reached a good stopping point. Thanks again for joining us, Mathieu.
Thanks, Seth.
Transport topics in one word: authoritative.
Knowledge.
Outstanding.
Reliable.
We asked Transport Topics readers to describe us in one word.
Informative.
Informative.
Integrity.
The Bible.
Authoritative.
The authority. Transportation information, that's two, but I gotta have it both.
Physically large. Oh, that's 2 words.
Visit influence.ttnews.com/say hello to find out what they're talking about.
Before we close, let's take a moment to revisit our original question. How can fleet managers utilize technology to get a better handle on vehicle speed and improve the safety culture at their companies? As we've heard from our guests, speeding is a major factor in the frequency and severity of crashes, so fleets can't afford to ignore it. And to manage vehicle speed, you have to measure it. Speed monitoring can help fleet managers track the safety performance of their drivers and provide additional coaching to the ones who need it most before it's too late. This information can also enable recognition and performance-based bonuses to reward your safest drivers, while at the same time helping to mitigate rising insurance costs. Meanwhile, adaptive speed management provides a way for fleets to take an even more hands-on approach by actively limiting vehicle speed based on geography and the posted speed limit. At the end of the day, the foundation of a fleet's safety culture is built on training, company policies, and making it clear to drivers and dispatchers that safety is always the number one priority. But speed management technology is a key tool that fleets can use to reinforce that culture and take safety performance to the next level. If you've enjoyed this episode of RoadSigns, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If my questions have sparked questions of your own, share them with me and the RoadSigns team. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. We'll read them and respond daily. And of course, we'll be back in 2 weeks with a fresh episode of RoadSigns. Until then, I'm Seth Clevenger. Thank you for listening.